Yeah, Sarah, he was having trouble, so I think he's signing out and then signing back in.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
When the waiting room slows down, we'll get started, but we're still getting people kind of connected and joined in here. So we'll give everyone another minute or so. So hang tight. We appreciate it. If you've just joined us, if you can rename yourself on your Zoom on the list, just rename yourself for your full name and turn your camera on if you can and mute yourself for now. We'll have a chance to unmute and have some discussion later, but we've got a large group, and so we're just trying to keep it manageable. Okay, Dr. Glasner, have you trying to find you here?
He's there.
Hi, Sarah. I am here. I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm here by phone, but I'm going to try to rejoin on my computer. So if you see me trying to rejoin, that's why, but I am on the meeting.
Okay, great. There you are. Okay, we're still getting a few folks joining, but it looks like we're maybe slowing down a little bit. So, and where's Steve? Just trying to find Steve.
I'm here.
There you are.
Yes.
Fantastic. So it looks like the waiting room slowed down a little bit, and it is 7:05. So in the interest of time, I think we should get going. So Steve, I didn't know if you wanted to kind of kick us off and introduce the mayor, and then we can get going.
Okay, well, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank all of you for your interest and your time for joining us. We're going to have some introductory comments by the mayor, by Dr. Glasner, and I believe Amy, is that correct, Sarah?
Yes.
By Amy. And so this is the first meeting at the advisory committee. There will be more. We're really today is just kind of talk about the big picture of the project itself. To introduce myself, I'm Steve Zanoni. I'm with Project Management Consultants, and I've been helping and supporting the three organizations in organizing all of this, working with the different consultants. So again, thank you for your time, and we're very grateful to have you participating today. Mayor Weiss, I think I'm going to hand it to you first. Is that correct?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces. So I always enjoy meeting new people. So we appreciate you taking your time this evening. Let me just start by saying that tonight is both simultaneously a start and also the culmination of the efforts of many people on this call and so many others who are involved in this process, who are big believers in carrying forward our tradition in Shaker of sound and thoughtful planning for our community. This Forward Together process is really both historic and groundbreaking by bringing together the city, the schools, and the library, along with the guidance and input from our community to really set a path forward for our facilities in our communities. And while, as you know, the focus of our efforts will be on facilities, it's really much more than that. It's about our priorities, our goals, and our hopes for our community. We all know there's much to love about Shaker, but one thing is very clear, and that is that our residents have very high expectations. They expect us to use our taxes and assets wisely, effectively, and efficiently. But as a result, through this process, we have really a window of opportunity to set a course for the next decade and beyond relating to our community's facilities and our capital investments. So you're going to learn a lot tonight through this process, but I just wanted to start by saying thank you for being part of this process and really helping us make history. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Glasner from the schools.
Hello, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you to the mayor and to Steve and everybody else who helped make this happen. I very much agree that this is both the start of a pretty historic effort and the culmination of a lot of work just to get us here. You know, from the school's perspective, we think that this is really kind of an unparalleled opportunity for us to work together as an entire community to think about what our community's needs are and how we can work together to meet those needs, and how we can really shape our city and our community for generations to come. I think it is that powerful and that important, the work that we'll be doing together. I also, and I know this is probably clear to everybody here, but the work that lies ahead will not be easy. There are some pretty challenging questions that we have to answer as we think about the work that lies ahead. So I'm very much looking forward to embarking on that journey together with everybody here. I know just from reading the applications that everybody here brings a very unique perspective and experience and expertise to the table in terms of the discussion that we'll be having. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And I will now turn it over to Director Amy Schweitzer.
Hi, I'm Amy Schweitzer. I'm the director at the Shaker Library. And I second everything that the mayor and Dr. Glasner said. I'm so thrilled that we're doing this. I think this is an important and historic process. And I know the library is very, very pleased to be participating in this and collaborating with the city and the schools. And you know, really having this opportunity to engage so deeply with our community. So really grateful for your time. And if I just one little library plug, you may or may not know this, but the main library renovation is in progress. We're going to be closed from November 17th to November 30th for our final move-in, and we will be reopening at the main library fully renovated December 1st. So it's really our Bertram Woods branch that is kind of part of the master facility planning process. Since we just picked the dates, I wanted to just take an opportunity to help get the word out. And you know, we are very committed to providing branch library services as part of this joint master facility plan. So again, thank you all for your time, and I'm really looking forward to this process and all the conversations that'll be part of it.
Great, thanks, Amy. Steve, do you want to introduce a consultant team, or do you want me to jump in?
I'm on mute. Sarah, I'm going to hand it off to you. Let me first introduce you. All right. This is Sarah Bongiorno as part of Planning Next. Planning Next has worked with the Shaker community for a number of years. Their expertise is in community engagement. They put together a really unique community engagement team. They're part of a much larger team, and I will introduce the full team. We have the team of architects that are going to help support us as we go through this, to looking at facilities and what their conditions are, and also coming up with some physical options, and that's Van Aken Architects. They've worked in our community. They've worked on the most recently, you're all familiar with the Fernway School, which they handled all of the rebuild of that project. They're also supported in terms of cost estimating by Gilbane Construction. So they're a key member. So we have a really unique team in terms of really understanding costs and understanding buildings that are Shaker, that are unique to Shaker. Secondly, we also have a educational planner. One of the key elements of this joint facilities master plan is what is the educational vision of the schools. What do they want to accomplish? And we as a community. And so they're going to actually, and you'll hear about that a little bit later, they're going to be doing some visioning sessions and really looking at how do we deliver education to our students in the 21st century. The next element as part of Planning Next is Dr. Tamika Taylor for Compass Consulting. Dr. Taylor also knows our community. She's worked in the community for over 20 years, has lived in our community, did not attend the schools, but did live for quite a long time. Dr. Taylor is really unique in her skill sets. She has worked for a number of years in terms of how do you provide diversity within a community and how do you get community engagements by those who haven't had their voices heard. And so she's going to really help us find those voices and help us make sure that we're really participating for all our community members themselves. So I'm going to hand it off to Sarah, who's going to start us off. And if you can, I believe you have a PowerPoint presentation. Is that correct,
Yes.
sir?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Steve. So I appreciate that. And I have my colleague, Brian Ashworth, attending tonight as well. You'll see him. And along with Tamika, we are, the kind of engagement team. So we're going to work really hard along with you all to make sure this was an inclusive and equitable engagement process for the community. And I think this is such a, as the mayor said, there's a moment, for the community, and we're really excited to be, doing this process along with you all. So with that, I'm going to do the screen sharing magic here. So give me a second, and I'm going to get the PowerPoint up. If you're not Zoom savvy, and you can control up at the top your view options. You can put a side-by-side view options if you want to be able to see people and the presentation. So you can also go to gallery view to see more instead of the speaker view at the top of your settings as well. Okay, so I'm going to review the agenda quickly, and then we're going to get started. And this meeting is going to be part us sort of presenting some background information so that you all have a little bit of a level set as we start this process. But this is, we want to make sure we hear from you tonight too. This is not just us talking at you. We want to hear from you and hear your ideas and get into some discussion. So we want to balance that a little bit. So if there are questions that you have throughout this, this meeting, feel free to use the chat. We are going to be monitoring that. And if it's a question that we can't necessarily immediately answer, we'll gather all those questions up and we'll send out an email after the meeting. If there's some question you have or something that we're not addressing as part of this meeting. And then after we go through a process overview, we are going to have a little reflection. We're going to share a little bit about, what happened in phase 1 back in 2019 that the mayor mentioned of this visioning process and how that moves us into the master planning. And we're going to get at the end, we're going to have some discussion as well on some key questions for you all to react to. And then we'll have a few next steps at the end. I will say that during this, we are going to do some live polling. So if you have your smartphone or tablet nearby, or if you don't, grab it. You can also participate on your desktop, but if it's easier if you got your cell phone handy. So we'll be doing some live polling to kind of kick off our discussions. Okay. Now, before we get started here, I do want to give a chance for you all. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to stop sharing a second because it's going to be easier. I want to give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. But again, in the interest of time, we want to get into the meat of our program here. So we'd like to keep everybody, fairly quick and just share your name, what neighborhood you're from, and in one word, what you're feeling tonight as we embark on this effort together. So I'm going to just kind of go through my screen here. So I see Jeff Epstein, if you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Jeff Epstein, Mercer neighborhood, curious.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And then we've got, looks like Brian.
I'm going to guess it's Brian Galuli. I live on Scottsdale, so that's the kind of the Lomond neighborhood, but also more the Sussex neighborhood part of that. And I'm enthused.
Great, thanks, Brian. And then we've got Scott Shelfer. I apologize if I butcher your name. You can correct me.
No, you did great. Thank you. I'm Scott Shelfer. I live on Waybridge in the Boulevard Boulevard Elementary neighborhood.
Great. And what's your one word, how you're feeling starting as we embark this process? Do you have a one word?
I'm excited.
Excited,
So
great.
would be the word.
Thank you. And it looks like I've got, sorry, I don't know. I see maybe a last name, Walker. Oh, you're on, you need to unmute yourself. Sorry.
No.
That's okay.
Yes, I'm Willow Walker, and I live in the Lomond area. And my one word would be open and inviting.
Great, thank you. And I got James iPad.
Hi, I'm Jim Neville. I live in the Onaway district, and my word would be enthusiastic.
Great, thanks, James. And we got Stephanie Ryberg Webster.
I am Stephanie. I live in Fernway neighborhood, and I would say that I am excited.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. And Ramona.
Okay, Ramona Lowry. I live in the Ludlow neighborhood, but grew up in Moreland. So I've been a resident since '75. Also am very excited to participate in this process.
Great, thank you. And Jacqueline Crew.
Jack Coe, and I live in the Sussex neighborhood, and I am also very excited to be part of this process.
Great, thanks, Jack. And then Jacqueline Crew. I think you're on mute, Jacqueline.
Okay, my name is Jacqueline Crew. I'm in the Moreland area, and I want my one word would be community building.
Great, thank you. And we got Patrick Laughlin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Patrick Laughlin. I'm actually just moving from the Shaker Square area to Ludlow, and my word again would be exciting.
Great, thanks, Patrick. Looks like Sharon Lowenkamp.
Hi, Sharon Lowenkamp. I live on Winslow, and I'm eager.
Great. And Sonia.
Hi, my name is Sonia Winlock, and I live in the Moreland neighborhood, and I'm excited.
Great. And Crystal. Oh, Crystal, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are. Yep.
Crystal Montgomery from Moreland neighborhood, excited, wondering, etc.
Great. And we got Kim.
My name is Kim Roberts. I stay on Ashwood and I live in the Ludlow community. My word would be intrigued.
Good. And Rajani?
Hi, I'm Rajani Tendulkar, and we live in the Malvern neighborhood. Our kids go to the Onaway school district, and I would say my word is optimistic.
Great, thank you. And Nicole.
Hey, I think that's me. I'm Nicole Coxon. I live in, I guess it's Malvern, but my kids went to Boulevard, and I'm hopeful.
Great, thank you. Nevin.
Nevin Jenkins, Onaway neighborhood, and I'm optimistic also.
Great, and we got Brian Moore.
Brian Moore, I live in the Lomond neighborhood. I grew up in Moreland, so I'm a 55-year resident of Shaker, and I'm excited.
Great, thanks, Brian. Bailey.
Bailey Wells, grew up in the Mercer neighborhood, currently live in Fernway. And I think my word is going to be patient.
That's good. Thank you. Vicky Elder.
Hi, Vicky Elder. I also live in the Moreland neighborhood, and I'm all of these things that we've heard, but I'll pick optimistic.
Great. Thank you. Looks like Juan.
Yeah, Dewan McCarthy, grew up in the Sussex neighborhood, live in the
Ludlow neighborhood. I would also say curious.
Thank you. And Frank.
Hi, yes, my name is Frank Goforth. I live on Lattimore in the Lomond neighborhood, came here in '88, and I'd say I'm optimistic as well.
Great. Evelyn.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Buchanan. I live in the Boulevard neighborhood, and I would say I'm curious.
Great, thank you. And we got Kevin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin. I live in the Ludlow neighborhood and work in the Moreland neighborhood. And the word I'm thinking of is opportunities.
Great. And Lisa.
Hello, I'm Lisa Willoughby. I live in the Mercer neighborhood, but I grew up in the Onaway neighborhood.
Great. And do you have a
my word is passionate.
Passionate. Oh, great. Thank you. And Jeremy.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Negre. I live in the Fernway neighborhood. It's nice to see some familiar faces on the screen. And I'm going to piggyback on my Fernway neighbor Bailey's word. I'm going to change it up though. I'm going to say I'm impatient because I think a lot of the things that we're going to discuss are long overdue, and I'm really excited to get started, to steal my other neighbor Stephanie's word.
Great. Thank you. And Rebecca.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca, and I live in the Moreland neighborhood, and my word would be intrigued.
And John Noble.
Hi, I'm John Noble. I'm in the Fernway neighborhood, and I would say I am receptive.
Great. And we got Melissa.
Hi, I grew up in the Ludlow neighborhood, and I currently live in.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. I cut out for me there at the end. I'm not sure if that was my end or if everyone else.
My word, did you hear my word was passionate?
Passionate. Okay. Thank you. And Anthony.
Tony Peebles on Fairmount in the Malvern neighborhood, and I would say vision.
Great. Thank you, Tony. And Apoku? I hope I didn't mess that up.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm Opoku Minta Afari. I'm in the Moreland neighborhood, and my word would be enthusiastic.
Great, thank you. And we got Corey Littlejohn.
Hi, I'm Corey Littlejohn, and I would say excited and grateful.
Great, thanks, Corey. And then I think we got one additional person here, but I'm not sure what your name is. It looks, you're coming up Win 10 and some letters. If that's you, if you can rename yourself, that'd be helpful. And introduce yourself. Anybody there? Okay. Well, if we missed anybody that I missed, didn't get to introduce themselves, feel free to speak up now. And I'm going to go back to my screen sharing and we're going to get started.
You know what, that person just said that they don't see their name, but they're Joanne Blanchard.
Okay. In
the participant lane. But I am present and delighted to be a part of the process.
Great, great. Well, welcome everybody. I know that you all are busy people. You've got a lot of choices in how you spend your time, and that you're choosing to spend 2 hours tonight serving your community says a lot about you all. So we're really grateful for your time. So with that, we're going to get going. So we're going to give you a quick overview here. Steve's going to jump in on a couple slides, and you know, other team members and members of the client group, if you want to, of course, add on anything, please feel free to jump in. But, you know, at the root of what we're trying to do here is we're trying to develop a forward-looking master plan for the facilities in Shaker. And we also want to do that in a way that's creative and inclusive and an equitable public engagement process. We really want to, at the, you know, the bottom line, create conditions for success, you know, for the community. So those are sort of just three kind of base starting points here. So some of you might wonder, what is a community facility, you know, and what's in play here. So obviously community facility are, you know, the school buildings, the library, the city buildings, the parks, and trails and things like that. But specifically for this facilities master plan, these are the facilities that are in play, let's say. So all the school buildings, as well as administration building, the Ludlow, the Buzz Garage, Lee Road administrative facilities, some select city facilities, the Shaker Family Center, Stephanie Tubbs Jones Community Building, and Thornton Park. And then, as Amy mentioned, the Bertram Woods branch, you know, just renovated the main library, but the Bertram Woods branch is kind of in play here to see how we might think together about how all these work together in a master plan. So we wanted to just make sure that was a little bit of a level set there about what we're talking about. So this is a high level process diagram. Here, you know, over on this far left side, we're kind of representing the visioning process. So I'm curious, how many of you, just raise up your hand, participated in the 2019, like came to one of our public meetings, filled out an online survey? How many of you participated in 2019? Okay, so there's a few hands there. Okay, and a few folks that are new. So that's great. We appreciate if you, you know, you were with us in 2019, then some of this will be familiar. And if you're new, we appreciate your interest. So we did 3 rounds of public engagement as part of that, visioning, which set sort of a really strong foundation for this work that we're starting now, which is the master planning. And so we're planning from a process standpoint, 3 rounds of iterative community engagement. And we're going to be launching our first engagement in October. We're going to talk more about that at the end in the next meeting that we're having later in September. We'll be then using this input from this first initial public engagement to shape up what we're calling some scenarios. And we're going to test those back out with the public in early December. And then we're going to use the information that we receive from the public, and also, you know, your input as the committee, and the technical work that the Van Auken Aiken architecture firm's doing to really then formalize an approach and, you know, one final kind of set of recommendations in the master plan. And that will be in February. We'll test that out again with the public, get more input before things are finalized in April. So that's really how we see and of course you all will be, you know, in between these, having meetings to help shape not only what the engagement is going to be and help us get more people involved, but to actually provide substance, you know, feedback on the work as we move through the process. So I like to think of these as iterative rounds. So Steve, I'm going to let you jump in here on the master plan process goals.
And these are the process goals, not necessarily the goals of the project, which we're going to really need your support and help in determining those. But obviously, to capitalize on the existing strengths of Shaker Heights, I'm fortunate also to be a resident of Shaker for 37 years, and it is a unique place. And this process goal is, how do we make sure that this master plan is reflective of Shaker Heights, of the whole community? Next is determining the community goals and translating them into new facilities or amenities. We're going to need your support and help in that determination and how we're going to translate them. So you represent really all of the complete Shaker community, and helping us determining those goals will be critical in terms of the success. Obviously, we want a master plan that reflects the best use of space. And, you know, best use of space is both for the library, for the city itself, and for the schools. You know, certainly on the school side, there's academic needs and enrollment trends, but are there elements that are shared? Are there elements that can be, which really the next piece is, how can we provide some creative solutions for joint facilities? Why are we repeating the same uses by different organizations? Maybe there's ways to look at things differently in terms of joint use of space to really maximize the use of all of our resources, and rather than doubling up on our resources. Also, we want to identify strategies which will need your support and advice and counsel on for transforming underperforming or underutilized facilities. And so part of this master planning process is identifying those, and that'll be done through a process through community engagement, but also the use of our consultants who will really help guide us in terms of looking at things, saying, hey, you're really not using this building as well, or this building doesn't, it's a great building, but maybe it needs a different use. So what that will entice then or entail at the very end will a creation of a roadmap for implementation. Now that implementation won't happen tomorrow. As you know, this is a master plan, and it'll be over a period of time that we'll be able to implement that. But having that roadmap is really critical, and having a roadmap that's really representative of the community itself.
Great. Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
So we've also adopted some engagement guiding principles, which you all should be aware of because it was provided with the application for this group. But the Black Space Manifesto guiding principles that have been adopted. So we're really trying to do a process that brings in the authentic and meaningful community voice, and that we're doing this in a really equitable way. So Tamika's on board to really help ensure that we're reaching out and hearing from all the voices. You can read, I really encourage you, if you haven't taken the time to read those principles, they are on the resources page of the forwardtogethershaker.com. But I think we all, take responsibility for making sure that we're adhering to those. And if any point you feel like we're not, that's your cue to kind of help make sure that we're doing this process in the best way possible. So those
Sarah,
yeah.
Sir, can I just add one thing? The Black Space Urbanist Collective is really a unique organization. It is made up of African-American architects, planners, landscape architects, and artists. And they've developed this manifesto, which is very good for all. It doesn't necessarily look at African-American issues, but it looks at issues of those who are not participating in our community. And so I really would ask you if you could all look at go on their webpage. I think you'll find it very, very supportive of what we want to do here in Shaker.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So who's who in the process? Steve, I don't know if you want to take this slide too, or if you want me to jump in here, but this is kind of the players in the group.
Sure. Well, as you can see, there's like every process, it involves a lot of different groups and different constituencies. And first piece is, how did the three organizations put themselves together? How did they work together? Well, it's under a group called the Client Group. And that client group basically is representatives of the city, the library, and the schools, and some key personnel, administrators, and things of that nature who really manage the process. And that's very important. And this is part of this process. This client group put together this advisory committee. And so you're a reflection of their management processes. This above the client group is called the leadership group. This is the key group, and it's made up of representatives of elected representatives of the three organizations. For the city, it involves 2 council members and the mayor. For the schools, it involves the superintendent and 2 board members. And then for the library, it involves the executive director and 2 board members. This is a really key group that you'll be presenting to as an advisory committee. They're expecting your advice and counsel, and so they want to listen to you. But it's also important to help us develop the concept of collaboration, how the 3 organizations could collaborate better together. And so it's important that we have some of those representatives in the process. And that leadership group will then present to boards and city councils and things of that nature. You at the advisory committee, as you can see, is sitting right in the middle of this. You're helping us in terms of outreach. You're representative of our entire community. And so we want to get your feedback and insight, and then also your support in helping us making sure the community is engaged in this process. And so you'll be advising not only the leadership group, in thoughts and pieces, but also advising our consultant group and our client group of how we manage this. And that's where the public comes in. There's going to be a process and development of community engagement to get their general impact and feedback. And we have our consultant group. So as you can see, we put you all right in the heart of this, and we're very pleased to have your participation in this today. Is that helpful, Sarah?
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
So now I'd like to just hit really quickly. I know there's a lot of text on the screen, and we'll be sending out this information to you after this meeting, but your kind of roles and responsibilities, and some of this was hopefully communicated to you in the application, so you know what you're getting yourself into here. But like to just officially kind of run through this. So this group is officially representing the citizens of the planning process and of the larger community, and we see you as a proxy to that. We've worked hard to put this group together to represent the diversity in Shaker. And you're really going to, as Steve said, provide guidance, input, and feedback to the client group and the consultant team and the leadership group throughout the process. And so there's really sort of three different buckets here. You're going to spend some of your time in process, helping us design, promote, and support an equitable engagement process that really brings the authentic voice of the community into the planning process. And then you'll also get a chance to provide input and feedback on the substantive facilities master planning plan content and scenarios. As we start to really shape up some things, we're going to be looking for your input on that and really testing ideas throughout this process and seeing how we're doing. So and then also just in general, acting as ambassadors for the effort. We're hoping you will, help volunteer or recruit volunteers to help us with our different public engagement opportunities, attend, board or city council meetings as necessary to represent the committee, and then really act as stewards once the plan's adopted and we're starting to implement. So I'm going to just pause there for a second. I really want to get us into, I got a couple more slides and we're going to get into a little Mentimeter and discussion. But I want to pause there before we move on just to see if there are any quick questions or anything people have. You can also put things in the chat. As I mentioned, we'll be monitoring that. And if something we can't answer tonight, we will put together a set of questions and answers and send them back out to you. But I'm going to just pause and just catch our breath for a second and see if anybody has any burning questions or anything they need to ask at this point.
Sarah, we might also mention, I saw a few people look like taking feverish notes. We will put the presentations up on the website if for those that want to reference them later.
Thank you. Okay, so as we're going to put on our process hats here for a second, and we're going to talk about how we together are going to hopefully drum up some interest in this process, because again, we want to get as many voices into the process when we start the public engagement. And I mentioned we're going to be doing some of that in October as possible. And so, we specialize in public engagement at our firm. And we really believe that in order to get robust engagement, you sort of need to think of it in two ways. So the first way is communication. That's general awareness. That's posters and postcards, press releases, social media, generally getting the word out in the community that something's happening. What is Forward Together? What's this about? And people see the logo, they see the branding, and they start to get a sense. So there's this general awareness that we're going to be, and we've actually already started working with the communication leaders in each of the entities to start pushing, we're going to start pushing things out about this process through their channels, but would love your help as well on that. And then for the outreach piece, that's the specific invitations. Those are the personal asks, or word of mouth marketing, we like to call it. That is you connecting with your neighbors and friends and coworkers and your church group or your book club and sharing this opportunity for folks to get involved. You all have networks of networks, in the community. And so it's this overlapping, the communications and the general awareness with specific asks. We've found in our work over the past, 25 years that people may see a poster or a postcard and they may think, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. But when somebody they know and trust invites them and asks them, says, hey, I'm going to be this meeting on, in October in the evening, I'd love for you to join me, or I want to make sure you know about this opportunity to join a virtual meeting or do an online survey. And so that's really powerful. So we like to think of it in two ways, and we would like to, have your help as we go along in this process, thinking about it from that standpoint. This is our project identity, the Forward Together logo. This was developed as part of the vision process back in 2018. So for those of you who were involved, maybe you recognize this, but we really do think that branding and giving it a name helps that visibility in the community, helps people understand and tie back and distinguish it against any other planning activities that may be going on in the community. So we'll be using that. Okay, so we're gonna do some polling now. So if you have your smartphone handy, you can also use your device or your laptop if you want to open up a separate browser. But if you can go, just open a new browser on your phone, web browser window, and go to Menti, MENTI.com. And there's a code, I'm gonna put it back up in a second, so don't panic when I switch screens here if you don't have the code in yet. But I'm gonna bring up the screen. Put us into presentation mode. Okay, so at the top of the screen here, you should see the code. Brian's also gonna put it in the chat of the meeting, so if you need that code. So once you go to menti.com, it'll prompt you for the code. You put that in, you should see this on your screen. What key messages will motivate participation? So we're really looking for you all to sort of help us. And this is an open-ended, so you can type in, there is I think a word limit, but we're looking for what do people need to hear in Shaker to get them excited about this? What do they need to hear that will motivate them to participate, come out for our public engagement and get involved? So if you've got ideas on that, we'd love for you to type that in, hit submit. I believe this question set up where you can, submit multiple times. So if you have more than one thought, feel free to continue. And then we'll let this go for a little while and populate this. We may have a little short discussion, and then we'll move on into the next question. So it looks like we've got joint use of facilities that'll involve everyone in the community. Use of resources, visual depictions of future concepts for facilities. That's good, helping people make a visual. Innovation. Yeah, there's a one here about just making sure that there's some action out of it, that maybe that this is going to be there's going to be implementation for this. So I'm going to scroll down through these, and I'm going to give you guys a few. Looks like I got 22 folks participating right now. I'm going to let this go for a minute, make sure everyone's finding their way. If you have trouble getting connected, you can put something to the chat and Brian will try to help you. But then I would like to we can kick it off here in a minute, just to maybe get into a little discussion around some of these key messages that we're hearing. Got the word progressive, this idea of welcoming, that everyone is welcome. I think that's a really great message that we're going to want to portray. Another one about not just planning, but actually seeing a change. This, you live in Shaker, you are part of the community. That's a good message to priority on equity. Okay, well, looks like I got 40 suggestions here, 41. Okay, you can keep submitting things, but I'd love to just feel free to unmute yourself. But if anyone wants to elaborate on a key message or something that they submitted or wants to share, we'll give everyone just a few minutes to have a little discussion to kind of elaborate on any of the suggestions up here. Anybody want to kick us off? Don't be shy.
Hi, this is Jim.
Yeah. Hi, Jim.
While I didn't write it, it touched me to hear the one about you live in Shaker, you need to participate in this for the future of our community. I thought that was very well put.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, that is a nice message that resonate with people. Yes, anybody else?
I was for the process in Warrensville for the schools, and Steve was taking lead on that there. And I noticed that I took it upon myself to make sure that there were students at the table, to make sure that they were participating, but as well as learning about this process, about everything that's going on. And I think that the more opportunities that youth get a part of this process through the schools to see what's happening, but even have their voice heard, that's when the adults really start to say, oh, okay, maybe this is doable because there's some youth that are taking the lead on this.
Great. Thanks for that. Any other?
I
This is
agree with him. There's a lot of youth in Shaker, and a lot of them they do want their voices heard. So to involve them, that would be really helpful in getting other people involved.
Yeah, no, it's great, Evelyn. I like where this is going. I think in our next meeting, we're going to want to maybe have a drill down a little bit about how we can really focus and make sure we get the youth. We've in our other work and other places, that's something that we really focus on, and we've done some you know, done some survey and some different things where we've actually worked with teachers to have them have class time to respond to a survey or do some stuff. And I know that it's tough, you know, teachers are trying to do a lot in a little bit of time, but we've had really success if we can actually engage with schools and teachers to reinforce that. So let's talk more about that. And at our next meeting, when we're starting to get into the engagement details, that's a great idea.
Sarah, can I just add to this, because I know Nevin, you've been through this process before, and Evelyn, I thought you brought up a really good point. The educational planning is going to start, and that is involving students, and they have been selected. And it's interesting, not just all the kids who are sort of class presidents. We're getting a complete cross section of students, and that's the first step. And hopefully that step then can build to more steps through the community engagement of getting students involved. So we're hoping they get really excited during the visioning of education, and that they then expand to their roles of our entire community beyond the schools.
Great. Thanks, Steve, for that. Any last comments anyone wants to make before we move on? We've got a couple other questions, and I want to make sure we get time to get through everything.
I'd like to say something. My name is Brian Moore. One of the things is during my time with the Lomond Association, one of the things that you find is that we've got a wide range of socioeconomic backgrounds, and people have to feel welcome, because if they come to a meeting or to a gathering and they feel alienated, then they are less likely to return.
Yep. No, that's a good point, Brian. Thank you for that. And I think that's something that you all can help us with as we start to pick locations, times of day, you know, as we start to, you know, do this, like making sure that we're being conscious of some of those maybe perceived barriers or real barriers, making sure that we are being welcoming and open as much as we can. So thanks for that. Any other comments?
Hi, Sarah. This is Melissa. I like that we're mentioning about the youth and then the socioeconomic as far as populations. And I also think it's important to include seniors. My mom lives in the city, and I'm focusing more on midlife and seniors. So I recognize that as a population that I don't hear about. I know there's activities that are available at Thornton, but other than that, I really never hear anything that focuses on the senior or really gives them call to action and accommodation for them and their needs and desires and things like that.
Great. Yep. Good point, Melissa. Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, I have one quick thing here. I didn't write it, but I noticed that somebody wrote, what will Shaker look like in 2040? And I think that's a really, really key point. You know, this was a planned community that was envisioned 100 years ago for a life that doesn't really exist anymore. And so I think we really have to hold ourselves accountable and really involve our neighbors to, you know, trying to see what will it mean to live in Shaker in the future, right? If you think about our school buildings, they were designed for a different time with students with different needs when education looked terribly different. So I really like this idea of trying to think about what the next 100 years or the next 150 years of being in Shaker, what that means.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to move us along here, and if you go back to your phones, you should see it should advance to the next question. This is where we want you to think a little bit about tools for reaching people. So how do people get their, you know, find out about things? What are some ways we can get the word out? This is kind of helping with that communications piece. But what are the best tools for reaching people? You know, we know that there's a lot of online, you know, things happening right now, especially with the pandemic, but beyond that, if there's ways you can think about where people are gathering, where we can go out and reach people and get them, you know, make them more aware of this process. All right, lots of social media, text, Instagram, signs in the parks and public spaces. That's a good idea. Community outreach games. I like the idea of that.
It's possible you have to scroll up on your phone a little bit and hit go to slide if anyone's not seeing the next question.
Thank you, Brian. Library signage, mail information, especially for people without reliable internet. I think that's really something we've got to work on, is make sure the churches, yeah, we know there's some strong church groups in the community. Grocery store, the Shaker magazine, the barbershops and beauty salons. It's a good idea. Yep, in the schools, the classrooms.
Was anyone bold enough to put advisory committee as the best tool for reaching people?
You are going to be one of our secret weapons. You don't know it yet, but you are. I love all these TikTok references. I may look, maybe I look youngish, but I don't understand the TikTok thing. So if we've got some younger folks who get that, that would be great to start trying to reach out on that platform. Block parties, PTO, neighbor notes, neighborhood associations. That's great. A billboard at Van Aken. Okay, I didn't realize there was a billboard there. That's good. Okay, great. This is super helpful. I'm gonna let it go for one more minute. We're just trying to crowdsource here ideas from you so we can start working on our outreach strategy and communication strategy. There's one for the Shaker Hardware, sporting events. Yeah, there's quite a few fall events happening. With sports events and things with the schools. So we'll try to take advantage of as many of those as we can to get the word out this fall about this active opportunity in October. Farmers market, that's a good one. Okay, I'm going to move along. If you have other ideas, feel free to put them in the chat. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move us along. So this next question is about barriers. So let's think a little bit about what maybe the barriers are to participation for people in our community. And a gentleman earlier, I think maybe it was Brian, who mentioned, making sure people feel welcome. If they feel like they're alienated or not welcome, they're not going to participate. So what are other barriers? Time, yeah, people don't have time, childcare. Because some of these barriers we can try to, relieve through how we, the times of days and the locations and how we are engaging people, whether we have childcare at the meetings, things like that. So we'd like to try to work towards that. This education level one, I'm not sure who wrote this in, but I'm wondering, I don't want to assume wrong, but that make sure that things are at, different education levels. So not everything's that people can understand it and read it and things. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, this is Brian Moore. Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Great, thanks, Brian. After work meals for children, meeting times, new residents that aren't tied in yet to community networks. Yeah, that's important to try to get folks that maybe aren't plugged into a network or a group. Those are some of the hardest to reach.
And I'm thinking for seniors, getting their transportation and to participate.
Yeah.
In activities, I think is critical.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Access to transportation. Yeah, this one down here, belief that participation is irrelevant. That's a really important one and a hard one if we're coming into something that has been, ingrained in the community or something that we've had issues with in the past. So that'll be something to overcome and try to, sometimes you can't say anything. People just have to have a little faith in the process and come along with us, and we'll hopefully proof will be in the pudding and we'll walk the walk. But I think that one is really, we see that a lot in communities, and that's a hard one to overcome, but we'll work hard to do that. Oh, what happened?
Sarah, I think to your point earlier today that you mentioned about the face-to-face or the personal connection being the most relevant or most important, they again are going to know or to feel that if you are telling them or you are asking them to give your word because you are already involved in a process, they're going to trust the process a little more.
Yeah, that's definitely it. I think people, they do look for those personal connections and validation that way. Okay. Well, great. This was super helpful. We are going to, we're going to switch gears again here. And I am going to minimize that and go back to my screen. And we're going to do a few more. All right, everyone see that? I'm going to do a few more presentation slides and then we'll get back into some more discussion. We really appreciate all your input. Everything that you put into that Mentimeter is captured into a database for us. So we'll be going through that and sharing that back with the client group and really helping. Those suggestions will help us as we start to fine tune our communications and outreach approach. So I want to take a little trip back in time here to 2019 when this phase 1 started. And just give you all, it looks like a number of you were involved in that, but just as a reminder, you know, we did hear from over 800 people as part of that process. We started out with a thought leaders panel discussion, and we brought in folks talking about what's the future of libraries, what's the future of the schools, what's the future of city facilities. And we tried just to have a sort of thought leaders panel with some Q&A to kind of kick us off in thinking about this work. We then had vision workshops and an online survey where we asked some really specific questions about, you know, looking at a map, what areas of town, which facilities and which neighborhoods, you know, might there be more potential. We asked some specific questions about which facilities people use most and that kind of thing to get just a level set about how people were using the facilities currently. And then we worked to put that together, and we, you know, had an open house at the end with also an online component. We collected over 4,200, you know, comments and ideas as part of that process. We created a facilities at a glance and inventory as well. We started looking at all the facilities in the community and kind of making that, it was a little bit of some stats about the community and facilities as sort of an educational piece. And what came out of that was a vision, goals, and 15 priority initiatives. And so that's really what launched into this more specific master planning process. That plan is on the website. So I encourage you to take a look at that vision plan. There's some really just good foundational work in there. It's more, you know, we're going to be getting a lot more detailed and nitty gritty as part of this, but I think at a high level, it sets a really good foundation. As part of that phase 1 work, we had sort of 4 bullets about, you know, why are we doing this? And this is in the plan, so you can read all this. I know it's a lot of text, but really, you know, it boiled down to, you want to be fiscally responsible. We're in a sharing economy now. It's really hard to get things done, especially with local municipalities, public entities are having to do more with less. And so this coming together to share just makes a lot of sense. And then, you know, there is a history of a tradition of working together to leverage, you know, community assets, but from a facility standpoint, that had kind of been siloed. That was just sort of how things were done. But now I think, again, back to this sharing economy, we're in a different world now. And so we need to think differently. And then, of course, Shakers actually, you know, has grown and a little bit in their population, but you sit within a region, you know, the Cleveland kind of metro area that has lost population. And so trying to attract new folks and new families is really important. And so having the civic assets and the community facilities is one of those really, you know, fundamental parts of a healthy and vibrant community that can attract folks. So that's really important. And then, of course, to promote the diversity and inclusion of the community, Shaker Heights is proud of its diversity and really strives to be an open, welcoming place. And those community gathering places really prove that, right? Where everyone can come together and feel welcome. So that was sort of some initial thinking about why, you know, why this plan, why this coming together. So this was the vision that was produced. It's in the vision plan. The vision for future of our community facilities is one where collaboration is at the heart of every opportunity, decision, and investment. And so that really set that tone about collaboration and working together. There was also some sort of high level process goals about, you know, what we were trying to do in this plan was to gather people, connect places, utilize assets, and collaborate broadly, and unpack that a little bit here. And again, this is all in the plan, but, you know, really just trying to places and programming that brings the community together and then connecting those places. We heard a lot in that first round about it's great to have these different assets, but if we can't connect them with sidewalks and trails and pathways and bike lanes and stuff, the infrastructure is really important as well. And then utilizing those assets, you know, making sure that we can utilize them in the future to the point about what's the next 100 years look like, you know, multifunctional, efficient, adaptable, flexible. I feel like that's sort of the, you know, what places are doing now in order to pivot and be able to adjust as things change. We know things are changing quickly. And then, of course, collaborate broadly, the spirit of coming together and really trying to maximize efficiencies with respect to costs in the environment was really important. So we want to do a goal. I think we mentioned this in the beginning, like a goal. I think Steve mentioned this when he was talking about the master plan process goals, that we really want to have some work on goal setting, goal writing with you all over the next couple meetings. And we want to get some input from you on some key questions that'll help us maybe frame up some more specific goals. So we are going to switch back now to the Menti. So give me a second to do my switcheroo, get your phones ready. And we've got a few more questions to go through here and to get into some discussion. So this is a word cloud activity. Is everybody caught up on their phone? Do they see this question in one word? What do you love most about Shaker Heights? Inclusion, it's a great word. Community. Possibility. Diversity. The history, the architecture, the trees. Great. So I'm just going to let this go as you submit your word. And I think, Brian, this one's set up, they can submit more than one, right? Because I know it's hard just maybe to pick one word that you love. But if you've got more than one word, we'd like it one word at a time. But if you have more than one idea, please go ahead and you can submit some more ideas here. But diversity is holding out, and people as the top word. So that's great. Community, nature, history, family first, the quality schools, the landscape. It's great. The neighborhoods, the schools, family, parks and lakes. The diversity is still holding true there in the middle. I love that diversity, people, and community are sort of the top ones there. Okay, when this slows down a little bit, we've got lots of people love lots of things. That's great. I'm gonna let this play out. If you got one last word, go ahead and hit submit. I'm gonna fast forward here. Looks like we got 68 words, 70. We've hit 70 now. That's great. Okay. I'm going to advance it to the next question. Maybe. There we go. So this one, I want you to think about strengths. So what do you think are the greatest strengths of the Shaker facilities? You can think of them from school, cities, or libraries perspective, or just in general. But when you think about the Shaker facilities right now, what do you think the strengths are? And this is an open-ended one. And once we collect some, oh, it looks like it's a word cloud. Okay, it's a word cloud one. As we get some ideas up here, we will have a little discussion around some of the ideas. This looks like architecture. Sort of the schools are well maintained, the geographic spread. Okay, so I would love to, again, similar to how we did before, and you can react to anything on the screen, something you put in or something that somebody else wrote, but let's have somebody kick us off here about greatest strengths of the Shaker facilities. We're truly trying to understand what we're already doing that's really good that we need to think about moving forward. Anybody want to kick us off?
This is Lisa. So I think that we do a really great job at maintaining them, especially since most of them have not been updated in a really, really long time. Having lived in this community for 38 years, a lot of the buildings look exactly the way they did 25 years ago. Thornton Park has not changed hardly at all in decades. There's been small tweaks, but it's pretty much the same. But when you think about that, considering those things, they are maintained very well. But they could be a lot better.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
This is Faisal Khan. So I was going to say architectural excellence, and that appears to be a big theme here, but that also represents, in my opinion, a weakness that we're considering a physical building or physical structure as a strength, as opposed to the services for which the building is supposed to provide or foster. So just a little reverse on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that.
This is,
I would have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's one thing that's just remarkable compared to so many of the other places around us is how tightly integrated our facilities are in our community. There's almost no other neighborhood where you can go to a high school that's in the middle of a residential neighborhood and see neighbors from all around and walk to and from it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you for that.
This is Willa Walker. I think the dedication and interest and pride of citizens in this community is a strength. And they're interested in, maintaining and keeping the community safe and the building upkeep. And I think that's a strength of the citizens, and a strength of the community because of the interests and of the citizens.
Great. Thanks, Willa.
And this is Ann Barnett. I wanted to share that I couldn't agree more when you actually asked the strength of the facility, that I could sit here all day and tell you about the strengths of the schools and the parks and everything else. And then I got stuck with what is the strength of the facility. And so I do think that there's a strong gap between the facility and the services. I feel like Shaker residents are almost forgiving of the facilities when we know we deserve better.
Great, thanks, Ann. And Evelyn, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say I have 2 kids in school, and the staffing, at the schools and even the libraries, they're beyond helpful and friendly, and they're ready to just jump in whenever you need them.
Great, thanks, Evelyn.
Just wanted to say, if I may, I see someone wrote locations, and it's just what I was thinking. Everything's nearby. No matter where you live, something of these public facilities is nearby. A lot of communities, you need to hop in the car to get anywhere, but you can walk to something interesting nearby here.
Great, thanks for that.
So this is Stephanie. I'm like a buildings and architecture person, and so I did write architecture, and I appreciate that. But I've been trying to figure out how to say the people who work in them within the word limit you've given us, and I haven't come up with a way, because I think that is also on my mind, that the buildings are just buildings until you populate them with people.
Yeah, no, very true. Thank you for that.
This is Melissa, put my video on. I wanted to say that I recognize the passion in the city. I grew up in Shaker with Woodbury. I graduated from Shaker, and I really can honestly say that the passion that they had back in 1977 for the city has evolved and only gotten better through the years to 2021. And that has never wavered. It's only strengthened.
Great. Thanks for that, Melissa. Any other thoughts you want to share or elaborations? I know we limited you on this one. So if you want to expand on something more than one word, then please feel free. Okay. Well, that's great. Let's move on then. So now we're going to flip the script a little bit and talk about challenges. And so some of this, we want you to think about the greatest challenges of the Shaker facilities, again, schools, cities, or libraries. So, and some of the things that are the strengths could be the challenges as well. But okay, this one's set up as an open-ended, so you can say more than one word on this one.
Sounds like Dr. Glasner has to give out some raises tomorrow morning.
So outdated, the age, not future forward thinking, and equity, narrowness of uses. Yeah, things were built for sort of one use in the past. And this idea, I think of the adaptability and flexibility is key. Modernization of needs, keeping up with the change, accessibility. Not meeting the 21st century needs. Expensive to maintain, another outdated. Accessibility to certain neighborhoods. Keeping up with technology. No wow factor. That's interesting. We can maybe dig into that a little bit in a second. So again, as you're putting in your thoughts here, if anybody wants to elaborate on, you know, anything that they shared, or maybe something you see up on the screen, I'll try to keep scrolling down as more ideas come in. But again, I'd love to hear a little bit more and get into a little discussion about the challenges.
Well, we don't have a recreation facility of any real use. We have a pool, we have an ice skating rink, but we don't have a exercise facility, and we don't have a place that's big enough for one.
Yeah, like a centralized place where everything can kind of be together. Yeah, okay.
And that does go to the wow factor, because a lot of times those joint facilities, you know, architecturally are impressive, or by size or by use can be impressive.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I was going to say too, I love our architecture. I think it is beautiful. I just love old buildings, but retrofitting the buildings to keep up with modern times and provide more, you know, current needs is really important. So I would love to keep, you know, outside. I hate to tear down. I think, you know, our buildings are great, but we really need to freshen them on the inside. And I think what I would say is common among so many of them is the lack of light. They seem like very heavy, dark buildings.
Yeah, thanks, Vicki.
So this is Stephanie. I think it's on the screen a few times, but I think given the likelihood of increased temperatures in the future, that ignoring the lack of air conditioning will be a problem for the forever at this point. So, and particularly it's ties to like how students are able to learn in those kinds of conditions. So I think it's something that has to be on the table.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great point.
Somebody brought up.
I was just
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
All right. I was just going to say that as dreadful it was when Fernway School caught fire, I think that the changes that Van Auken Akins made in that building to adapt to all the current state standards for educational processes and just the things that they've done serve as a great example of what can happen. They have the potential for air conditioning, and maybe they even installed it. But it's a great example of what can be done with a lot of these older buildings.
Great, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think somebody on the previous slide pointed out how everything that there's a closeness of all of our facilities that you can get to them basically from any neighborhood. But I think that there's a proximity, right? We, you know, on a map, you're close to any one of our city or school or library facilities, but they're difficult they're not super accessible, right? So if I think about like my kids who are a little bit older, but not quite high school age, you know, it's difficult to cross to cross Warrensville or to cross Lee to get to the library or to get to Thornton. And I think about some of the other neighborhoods like, you know, Moreland and Ludlow, right? It's hard to get to some of these facilities without a car. So I think finding some ways to make them more accessible to folks, or to make it easier to make them more walkable or bikeable, I think is really key.
Yeah, thanks for that.
This might kind of be some low hanging fruit, but even with the facilities we do have, the reservation systems, I know, say for PTO or for sports organizations, we'll submit like a facilities request and it sort of goes into a black hole. Like sometimes we get a response right away, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we never hear back and then we see another group is, using the field months later at that time. And then you ask and they never had a permit. They're just there. So there's all kinds of inconsistencies. And I just think to make sure, one, that everything's utilized efficiently and we're getting the most use of everything, and that we're spreading it out among different groups to make sure everyone has a shot to use the facilities. If we had a centralized system, maybe you could say, okay, within a week you'll hear back, and you could post somewhere who has what facility when. And of course, if the cities and schools and library work together, that it wouldn't be 3 different organizations, it would be 1. So
yeah, no, that's a great some kind of centralized scheduling and reservation system. That's a great idea. Thanks for that, Nicole. Other thoughts? Okay, looks like we've got about 60 different ideas on this one, so that's great. So thinking back about goals and outcomes, when we shared some of those goals from the phase 1, they're sort of high level, but now I'd like to know, what outcomes would you like to see related to community facilities? What are we really trying to achieve with this? And this could be something more high level, or it can be something, specific that you would like to see an outcome of this work.
I'm going to say I would like to see more accessibility for the disability community and have them more involved, because I don't see that. And as being a disability advocate, I don't see, access when you go to the library, how they can access in and out in certain facilities. So I would like to see more updated in all the facilities for those people, for seniors and disability who have challenges, more accessibility for them.
Great. Thanks, Jacqueline. Yeah, that's a good point. If we're really being open and inclusive, we've got to think about all the different types of people and ways we can make sure that we're making it fully accessible to everybody. We see some ideas about, shared uses, the rec center idea, concrete ideas for equitable access, updating recreation in all areas. We see the AC comment again, which is good. Safe places for all ages, including teenagers. Dedicated bike lanes. That goes back to the, accessibility from a connection standpoint, or the proximity thing. You might be close to something, but you may not be able to get there safely. Modern. Greater transit options. Yeah, this is interesting here, this idea. I'm not sure who wrote this, if you want to expand on it, but the vision based on how facility changes strengthen our whole quality of life, not just the individual missions of the school, library, etc. I think that's really what, it's almost like we're stronger together, right? We're bigger, we can do more things, but how we can really strengthen our whole quality of life and thinking of it beyond just the individual kind of entities. So that's interesting. Okay, so you can continue to add ideas here, but again, I'd love to get into a discussion if anyone wants to share something or elaborate on something about outcomes. What are the goals? What do you want to see when it comes to facilities in the future?
I have a question about the park in Shaker across from the middle school. Is that at play? It just seems like that is a giant
Yep, Rashawn.
resource
Yeah, I'm still in the meeting.
that we're not thinking much about when we think about, renovating schools.
It's used for a lot of soccer games, I believe.
And I would say, yes, that's in play. We can consider it part of the middle school, even though it's a separate property, but I think we can say it's in play.
yeah, if that was the median, it is used for a lot of soccer games. Sorry, I couldn't hear the beginning of that, but.
And I would just reiterate the accessibility for all neighborhoods in Shaker. Someone was speaking earlier about having proximity. It seems like a lot of the potential spaces to be addressed, we were just talking about the middle school, are concentrated in one area. Thornton Park, those areas are very concentrated. And when you're in our more civic corridor, around City Hall, it just feels less is available.
Mhm. This question about outcomes, it could also maybe you can think about, like, if you have any really big ideas about, to that point earlier about what is Shaker going to look like in 2040. If you've got really big ideas you want to throw out there, maybe they're catalytic or they're, I think this is the time to dream big. And of course, everything has to be brought into reality at some point. But at this early stage, I think some stretch ideas is good too. So if anybody has some really big ideas. These are all great things on the screen here, and we'll be, looking through all these comments. But if anyone's got sort of another way to interpret this would be sort of big ideas or stretch thinking about related to facilities that maybe hasn't come out yet.
We may be here already. I don't know based on the geography, but the idea of every resident being, a 3 to 5 minute walk from a high quality public space.
Yeah. I love the 5-minute, 15-minute city concept, in which Shaker's already you've got that nice structure built, but that's great.
I was trying to picture kind of all these different facilities in relation to each other. And it seems like very few of the facilities we're looking at are hemmed in, like are stuck with the street pattern or another kind of development. So many of the properties or, buildings that we're looking at have something else kind of across the way. And so this idea of working together gives us, new opportunities to look at it. The places that are hemmed in, when you look at it a long time from now, I guess, you just have to be sure that that use will still be good in 40 years, right? If it's a place that is to attract a lot of traffic, maybe it's not suited for that in a long time from now. Or maybe there's things we can do about traffic that gets people walking instead. Just some thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian.
If I could interject a little here, we can't get around automobiles, unfortunately, because we have some major thoroughfares going through the city. But one thing is, if we could come to a solution, and I won't try to design here, where people could move across the city, either walking or particularly by bicycles, without having to deal with cars.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that goes back to the point earlier about you can be close to something, but you may not be able to get there safely. And so I think that's definitely something that we're going to want to look at as part of this process. That's great.
Well, particularly for children. There are no children here talking about it, but they're certainly going to say something about that.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Thanks, Frank.
I know a lot of places that I take my kids to. Some of them I kind of avoid because of the congestion.
And you mean from just a trying to cross traffic?
Yeah, trying to cross and just accessible, like as far as parking and anything close by where you can walk to. And if you do walk, it's like you said, the traffic and everything, it's hard to get through.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Evelyn. Any other big ideas around facilities? Anybody wants to get out at this point? This is not your only chance. We'll be talking about more more things in the future, but any initial ideas? Well, again, we're going to circle back, but I think this is our last question.
This is Faisal Khan. Just one last point. Maybe think about doing a deep dive on where we stack up against private facilities, right? So if we're going to try to entice folks that want to move to Shaker or utilize public resources when they're utilizing private, let's take a look and see how far back we are away from kind of like a gap analysis on where we stack up against competitor facilities.
That's interesting. Yep.
Yeah, I think both competitor facilities within Shaker and just neighboring cities. Like say, take a look at, Pavilion and Cleveland Heights, or, you name it, go into our neighboring cities and where do we stand? And same thing, especially with athletic fields. I have kids that play a bunch of sports, and it always seems like Shaker's fields are not in as good condition. And, again, they're more spread out, which is beautiful, but it also means we don't have a big field complex that's all together. So it's just, plus or minus, but looking at how that compares to neighboring cities.
Yep.
And as it relates to that, turf, and that's necessary just because in the fall and in the spring, it rains a lot, and our kids, our youth, are forced not able to practice. And so we have to drive all over God's green earth to find an indoor facility with turf and pay for it, when we could have lots of, year-round fields available to us right here in our own neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Great.
To piggyback on that, Scott, that's a comment I made too about tennis courts, because with COVID, when everything was shut down, I was at Rocky River, looking at all these other outside facilities to find tennis courts for my daughter. And even at the middle school, they had to go to Thornton, and the condition of those courts, teams did not even want to play them there with the conditions.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. That's a good point. Any other last thoughts about outcomes or big ideas about facilities at this point? You got to get off your chest.
I'm struck by all the conversation about connectivity and bike connectivity. And I'm thinking about should we be thinking about our RTA network, which, is something that we're blessed with that many other cities aren't, and thinking about how those stations, as they come up for redesign, can be better integrated as a piece of connectivity to our facilities.
Great.
And I think I'll just add, outside of facilities, kind of hitting on what Faisal talked about earlier, the services that are provided for those families that live in Shaker, that at a certain point they decide that they don't want their kids to maybe go to the middle school or the high school, finding out based on the schools that they choose for their children to go to, what are the reasons outside of just education? Is there something that those systems are offering, whether they're private or public, that we aren't?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Lisa.
And I'm going to I'll take this one for the community. I'm just going to put it on the table. As we consider, all that might be possible and dream big and very futuristic, we have got to find a way to do this without burdening homeowners any further. I'll just put the pin in that one.
Mm-hmm.
That goes to my one comment about creative financing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Any last comments? We have a few slides here that we want to go through about setting up some of our engagement pieces and talk a little bit about how we see this engagement plan. We're going to hit on that a little bit more as we convene next time, but I want to get through a few things here. We're doing good on time, so I don't want to rush. I want to give you a little bit of time at the end too, if you all have questions. So as I mentioned, we are gearing up for this round one. We're going to call it, we're going to have a better name than that, more snazzier name, but right now it's our round one engagement. And right now we're we talk about it as a round because we see this as a period of time. Right now, it's October 4th through the 17th, where there's lots of things going to be happening in the community relative to this project. We've got some things listed here. Don't write down these dates. These are not tight yet. These are just locations and everything are tentative. We'll send out material, but this is our working our working list here. Got to start somewhere. But we're trying to think about offering, different ways people can engage, different times, different formats. So right now we're thinking about some Zoom virtual meetings, maybe a lunch hour and an evening, so that people can come together like this and have a chance to share their thoughts. And then we're also planning on 3 in-person workshop type events. One in the evening, one over kind of a lunch hour, and one a late afternoon. Again, trying to move around to different kind of parts of the community and also different times of day. We're envisioning these. Again, we're still designing this, and we want to bring something to you to react to next meeting, but have a little bit more time to put some flesh on it. But we're thinking of these as more drop-in open house, just thinking of the pandemic and how we're kind of unfortunately ticking back up in cases and things. We want to be together, but we want to be safe about it. So instead of having everybody maybe in round tables, elbow to elbow, like in a usual public meeting, having more of an open house where we can spread out stations and have multiple places where people can engage and they can kind of drop in over a course of 2 hours instead of everyone, in the space together at the same time. So we're envisioning this again as stations where people can get information and then react and give their input. And I see this as probably, we're going to have more information next meeting about the activities that we're going to do, but partly reactive to maybe some things that are starting to come out of that educational visioning piece that Steve mentioned, and also generative, like asking for ideas and generating things. So part reactive and part generative. We're also going to have an online survey open through that whole period of time, so people can go online at their own self-paced way and participate and give the same input. So it'll be the same questions, just different formats, so we can, hopefully get a broad participation. We're also going to host some focus groups during that time. And we're still putting that together, but we are going to have some, maybe targeted invitations where we bring people together, either virtually or in person to again, do the same, activities. And then we're also thinking about, a sort of a meeting in a box approach. And I'd love to get your all's input on this, because this, we would be doing this as using you, having your help in this, to facilitate these. But this meeting in a box idea, we would put everything you would need together. We can do it in a virtual, so you can do it virtually or in person, but it would be, instruction sheets and survey forms and comment cards, whatever you need to pull a small group of your friends, family, coworkers, your church group, Bible study, whatnot, together. And to go through the activities and ask the questions and get more people involved. So it's a little bit, it's more of a dispersed approach. We can go out into the community and kind of take it to where people are. But that's something that, we would really look for you all to help us, commit to say, yeah, I can do a meeting in a box. I'll gather some, 6 to 8 people, and either by Zoom or we like to think of, getting together and at a coffee shop or going to, in your backyard, and, have some snacks and have a moment together. So we'll have more information about that. But if that's something, I'd just be curious if that's something you all think, you would be willing to do. Again, this is some time outside of like our meeting time to do these, and it'd be sometime in that October 4th through September 17th timeframe. We would be looking to have these sort of more dispersed, small group conversations. And again, we would outfit you with everything you'd need, a script, the forms, everything would be packaged up in a really, easy to follow way. And you would collect all the input back from folks, and then return it back to us, and we could get their input, included. So what do you guys think about that idea? Is that something that you think would be good, that you'd be willing to help out with? You think it would help us, maybe outreach to folks in different groups to make sure that we're being equitable and we're hearing from everybody?
So I have a question. Is there a way to do this toolkit in a way they can like email us and it's like virtual and we can capture surveys that way versus having like paper surveys?
Yeah.
And everything going on in the world right now. Is there a way we can try to utilize technology and leverage it that way?
Yeah, so the online survey piece, I think if you're like, we would love for your help in dispersing that. So if you're looking to just help spread the word, that online survey will be more of like an individualized way that people can, get on their computer and fill that out. The meeting in a box is really meant to be more of, gathering people together for a discussion, whether virtually or in person. And then there'll be like a recording form, and you as like the leader, would write, take notes as I'm doing tonight as you guys talk, just kind of take the notes down of everybody's thoughts, and you kind of go around and have a little discussion. And there may be some individual parts of that as well, where maybe everyone takes some time to fill out a little card or something, but really it's about that group, capturing that group discussion, that dialogue. But yes, if there was some way, if you've got folks that want to participate, you can email them that online survey link and they can just participate that way. But this is just another way to kind of have that community conversation together in smaller groups. Does that help?
Yeah.
I'd be happy to help.
But I think the smaller groups would be very effective. I like that idea of getting smaller groups together and with discussion. And I think we could do, well, at least some of us could get a small group together. I'm thinking about the association. That may be one way they have of getting people together and with these questions, this tool, what is it, tool in the box or meeting in the box?
Meeting in a box, yeah.
Right. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay. Okay, great. Any other thoughts, or, we'll can have more information on this and, see who's willing to kind of do one or more than one if you're up for it. But if this seems like a good tool for you all, we'll include that and start working towards getting organized that way.
I think, this is Brian Moore. I think the more variety we have in outreach, the more effective it's going to be, because the people that are going to fill out the online surveys are the same people that always fill it out. So what we've got to do is try to figure out a way to reach those people that, for all intents and purposes, let me just call them disenfranchised. They're not participating in the activity. So that's really the segment that we have to get, because the other ones are going to read, they're going to look at the Shaker online magazine, they get the email. It's that other segment of the population that whose voice is kind of silent. So I think that the box would be a good way to do that.
Great.
I agree with Brian. Those were my thoughts exactly. And I also, given that I live in the Moreland community, we have renter population as well. I often wonder how we better engage landlords, absentee landlords in particular, to become more a part of the community where they own properties. That is a struggle of the Moreland on the Move Community Association, something we've been trying to figure out. How do we remind our landlords that they are part of a community and impacting a community?
And to kind of piggyback on what Vicki just said, it's one of those things, because the renters don't feel like they're part of the community.
Exactly.
So it's a matter of, even if we can't get the landlords, we've got to figure a way to be inclusive.
Agreed.
I guess it depends on the renter.
Absolutely.
I'm a renter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're true.
Right. I'm speaking towards, I guess I'm speaking towards what I've experienced as the majority.
Sure.
There are people that are involved.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because there are renters who are very, involved. And there's also renters that are more transient. They may only see this, they're going to live here for a year. They're not going to bother getting involved or getting to know people. So I think you're right. We have to think of it from, both angles. And I like the landlord idea too. A lot of times we focus on the folks living there, but they should take an interest. They're owning land, even if they don't live in the community. They own land and a property there. So I think let's think a little bit more about that as well as we start to think about our strategy.
This is Melissa. I live in an apartment building at the end of the Van Aken district, and it's about 11 years now. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I've even often thought about the services that as apartments don't really have access to in the city. And I think about that often, because I find myself calling the property manager to ask questions, but it's kind of like this black hole that they don't really know the answers. And so it kind of doesn't go anywhere. And some of these apartment buildings have community rooms, and they have robust community with their longtime residents. And again, that's where a lot of seniors are down this way. And so I think would be a good opportunity to also connect with seniors.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So this is Stephanie. I think I like the meeting in the box idea, but from my own comments in the chat and other people's comments in the chat, it seems like there's also a desire for something even quicker and more broad-based, like people setting up at homecoming or setting up a table at Van Aken. And that has to be like really efficient, like really quick input that people write ideas on a piece of paper or something like that. So it can't be like a whole survey or very elaborate. But I think there's, especially in early October, we have a fall festival at Fernway. I don't know what's happening at all the other schools and the library and Shaker Rec and all these things, but there's probably a lot of events at that time, that window that we could leverage.
Yeah, no, that's great. That was leading to my next question, was this pop-up engagement idea and leveraging existing events and things happening. So there's two ways, right? There's the publicity piece where we can hand out brochures that have the QR code that links to the online survey or tells people, advertises the different ways they can get involved, the online and the meetings. But I think even more so, having some sort of engagement piece, while we've got them, might be something that we can also think about. But yeah, if you know of events happening, feel free to put them in the chat. Even if you don't know the exact dates, we can sort that out. But if there's an event, like she just mentioned, the fall festival, if there are other things going on in the community that you think we can leverage, we're starting to, with our communications team, we're starting to build up that, that thinking and that spreadsheet of all the things we want to try to, maybe have representation at. And Tamika's going to be helping us with that sort of boots on the ground outreach as well. So we were just talking today, her and I, about let's brainstorm all these different events and how we can get, some visibility there from a publicity standpoint. But I like your idea, Melissa, about, it can't be like a 3-page survey if you're going to be, people walking by and stuff, but some way we can get people to engage and give us a little bit of input, and then maybe also advertise for the other ways they can, do the online survey or get involved.
Worse than before. I'll say 2 things with that. I think that's a good idea. One, the district does have an electronic calendar and it lists pretty much all the district events. Well, not all, but quite a few district events. The other thing I just saw at a conference I went to, the same way you're putting the questions out there for us, just huge boards where everyone can write. Everybody isn't going to do the QR code. So just keeping in mind to reach the different audiences where the question is there and they can just write down their response.
Yeah, like a big idea board. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, actually, we've done this before, like for the school strategic plan, though there were tons of note cards. I mean, there's so many events I could think of that we could go to with this. Right. Which I think the note cards were fine. I will say it's a lot of work for someone to go through and input it all. But if we can coordinate that, or maybe the big open board is the best idea. Yeah. Just how we collect. Go ahead, Steve.
And Sarah, sorry, Nicole, I hope I didn't cut
No,
you
I'm done.
off. And Sarah, as we're considering all of the ways to connect with adults, if we could also figure out how we can get our kids' voices from the school buildings, where they are. Yeah. We know that's going to be technology heavy, QR codes, 2-3 quick question answers, but we really need to get to our children to give them an easy on-ramp to give some input.
Yeah, no, that's really important. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Sarah, I want to add a little here. Yep. Back in 2019, when we did the original community outreach, and even now, but in 2019, the demographics of the people who volunteered and came and gave their opinions did not match the demographics of Shaker.
Yeah.
And I think these meetings in a box are going to be very important, because we're going to have to intentionally go and encourage people who were not represented in 2019 and some feedback. And it's going to
Yeah.
take more effort on our part.
No, you're right, Frank. And that's really, but I think been important for this second phase of the work, because we realized that we didn't have a group like you all helping, a really broad, diverse group, that you guys are like the pebble in the pond, right? That can help us with that. So we recognize that in order to really, do what we need to do in an equitable way and make sure we're hearing all the voices, we need to put this group together. So you guys are part of that infrastructure, and we're hoping we can, do it better this time. So you're right. Thank you for that. And I think you're right. The meeting in the box can help us be targeted. Now, one thing I will say just quickly is that we like to try, like for the online survey and the in-person stuff, we will have some sort of way to capture some demographic information from folks if they will give it to us. And most people do. But we will try to get some so that we can come back to you all and say, look, here's how we did, we missed this age group, or we missed this, minority group, or this area of the town. We don't have people represented from this neighborhood or something. So as we're going through the process, that demographic information we collect from the participants is really will help us as we move forward. And as we do these different events, we'll try to process that quickly. So even in the course of that 4th through 17th, we can say, hey, advisory committee, we're not getting that 25 to 34 age group. Can you do some help? Help us out. If you're in that age group, help us get your networks jazzed up. So I think we will try to have some of that, some of that demographic information so we can know how we're doing, and we can do better. Again, each round we're going to want to try to improve on that. So that's helpful. Okay.
And Sarah, I'm
Yep.
sorry, I'll make this last real quick. When you think about that meeting in a box, maybe there's a variation for that meeting in the box that can be left in our businesses. I think about on the counter, something that can be left in our businesses, our stores, especially our pizza shops, our food shops, what is that? Boston Market and those places that could also be a quick engagement for the people that are coming there that live in Shaker and get a response. And a group of a location. I'm fading. What time is it? Yeah, I'm fading. A location where we might also connect with voices we don't usually hear are daycares. I think we have quite a few daycares in the area. Might be a good place to connect with parents.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that.
I understand what everybody's saying, but as an advocate from Georgia, we have the community, the churches also, worship centers should be involved. That's a place where families go on Sunday morning. As being in the ministry, I've done a lot, especially Georgia, with the churches, and the community have to go on. One can't be about the other. You can have the business, but you got those, you're kind of like separating people. And if you're going to be inclusive, it's people that go to church, it's people go to work and go to school. You got to be inclusive of everybody and mindful of everybody on where you can communicate, because I can tell you, it's just like the mayor was just down at Eastview Church over here in the Moreland area. The preacher over there had the mayor and everybody was over there, and he talked about the community. So there's churches around here that need to be more involved and be inclusive, because they can get the word out too.
Yeah, no, that's great. We should definitely want to tap into the faith-based community and the churches there. And one of the last bullets on this slide here about a publicity toolkit, we're working closely to develop, resources, sample social media posts and a flyer and a little PDF invite that you can email. And we do have one thing in our publicity toolkit, which is a bulletin, and it's configured like a little information card on two sides. So you can print it off and slice it down the middle and stick it into a church bulletin or a program of some sort. So we're working on putting together some pieces and parts of that. And once we get our date set and our messaging and things, and this is all the information that you've provided tonight is going to help us fine tune this. We will email that out to you, and you can, as much as you can help us get into, if you're belong to a church or you've got connections, if you can help us get into that. And then I think, again, Tamika is going to help us with some of that as well. But we definitely want to take advantage of that. And I wanted to just touch on that we are, once we're quickly going to be getting this stuff pulled together, we'll email it out to you. But we really are going to need your help and spread the word about the opportunities to get involved. And we'll talk more about this, in the next meeting, which actually in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward here. We're doing okay, but I want to get everyone out of here on time because I know it's late. We are targeting the next meeting on September 22nd from the same time from 7 to 9. It seemed to work for folks tonight. We're hoping we can, possibly be in person, but it might be virtual. We're going to kind of make that call as it gets a little closer. I know it's only probably about 3 weeks away now because it's September 1st already. But we will be communicating with you about that. But in that meeting, we'll answer any questions you have about the publicity toolkit. We'll get that out to you beforehand so you can start using it. And we'll have some instructions in there, and we'll be talking more detail about that engagement. We'll have our date set and all that by then. And we'll be talking more about we got the how maybe figured out, meeting in a box and the online and the different opportunities, but what are we really asking them? What are we having them do? And I like these ideas of the quick engagement. There may be people can sit down and fill out the online survey and spend a few minutes, but if they're just passing through the grocery store or something, can we still get some kind of input? So that's an interesting idea that we'll noodle on a little bit, and we can talk about that next meeting. We do have sort of a tentative meeting schedule. Again, as soon as we can lock some of these dates. And I think the ones in the fall are probably pretty, we gotta just make sure that we're aligning with some of the technical work that VAA is doing. But early November, maybe the 3rd, and then maybe the 17th, those are some dates that we've got on our sort of project calendar right now. And then sometime, in January, February, a mid-March meeting and a late March meeting. So that's sort of the rhythm. Again, we will be sending out as soon as we can, so you can put the holds on your calendars. We will send that out. If this 7 to 9, time frame, doesn't work for you as an issue, please, Brian, can you put my email address in the chat? Please write to me. Let me know if this is if you made an exception for tonight, but going forward, you just can't absolutely do this time. We'll try to pick a time that works for everybody. But it's hard with a big committee. There's like 35 of you all to maybe get everything that works perfect, but we'll do our best. And we will send out information as soon as we can about these future meetings. So I'm going to stop there. We have a few minutes left. If anybody has any questions or any last comments, we'd love to hear that now.
I was gonna say, with the meeting in the box, if they are within like a quick meeting, every single day, twice a day, I'm dropping off and picking up my kids, and just sitting there talking to the parents that are not only in my kids' class, but in the same grade or a grade level up. We socialize, so that would be a good time to actually get their input and information.
Okay, yeah, great.
Sarah, this is Steve Zanoni. I do want to add one little piece, and I know we've overwhelmed all of you today. As you're aware, we're moving so quickly, and one of the things that's happening is we are having on September 9th and 10th the educational visioning session, and the schools have worked very hard in terms of getting a really diverse group. It involves really parents and teachers, educators, teachers, administrators, things of that nature. 2 representatives from the advisory committee are participating. That's Vicki and Stephanie, which we really appreciate that. There will be a presentation at the end of the second day. And I can, due to COVID, first of all, we couldn't find a space big enough that was available in the schools because school's in session. We had to go to Corporate College, which is nearby, but it's part of Tri-C. But what I'd like to do is we could probably accommodate 5 advisory members to come to the last hour of the second day, at which time Frank Locker, who's the consultant, is going to summarize what the educational visioning teams came up with. And so I was wondering, Sarah, if you could help me, if there was a way that maybe if some people would be interested, we'd have to limit it to 5 because I just can't get any more people into that room. But I thought it would be helpful, and that's some of the advisory committee. We do have some members who are participating, but it would be nice if we could accommodate them. So is there a way we can do that, Sarah? That
Yeah,
people can
yeah.
volunteer?
Yes, yeah, I think so. Let me think. We can, maybe the best thing is just to email me if you're interested, and we'll kind of do a, first come, first serve kind of thing, since there's a limited spot, Steve. But I think Brian put my email in the chat. It's just sarah@planning-next.com. But if you're interested in that, and that is the 10th, right? September 10th, next Friday from 3:30 to 4:30, right?
That's
At
correct.
College. Well, and we
Thank
can
you.
email you more details about that. But if you're interested in attending to hear that, one of the things that we'll be talking about at our next meeting. So Frank's going to do this, this 2-day, intensive kind of visioning workshop with folks. And I think our job is to take critical pieces of that to the public, right? So this is a limited engagement. We've got a certain amount of people are going to get in the room, and like Steve said, it's focused on parents and the students and the administrators and such. And there's some community members participating as well. But I think we as a group need to figure out, like, what are the best activities from that? What are some of the things that we need to take from that and share with the larger public at that first round of engagement? So those of you who, can maybe are participating or go and listen in on that final presentation, you can help share with the group, bring some of that perspective as we start to really nail down the activities and the questions that we need to bring to the public, so that they can, have a similar experience and be involved in that piece of it.
I
Thanks.
was contacted about attending next week's session, but I couldn't because it's during work hours.
Yeah.
So I declined, but I can do the 1 hour on Friday.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank
Crystal.
Hey, Sarah, this is Jack. Just a quick question. Do you have any demographic projection data available for all the neighborhoods that you can share with the group? Are you guys expecting the population to grow, to stay steady, to decline? What is the makeup of the demographic for the population?
That's a
going
good
forward?
question. I think that's part, Steve, you might can jump in here. I think that's part of VAA's work when they're doing some of their assessment work. And then we can share that at a future. Chris Dewey with VAA couldn't be here tonight, but he's our main contact. So some of that more technical pieces, I think we can pull in future meetings. But Steve, is that part of what they're doing?
Yes, and it's in process. A lot has been completed. I don't know if some of you are aware, these school buildings were assessed 5 years ago. They're being updated now. The city buildings that you saw on that list were assessed, and we're now part of that assessment.
Steve, sorry, I'm just talking about like population data, not the population.
So Steve, I can answer that.
Please,
Obviously,
thank
the 2020 census is.
No, I'm not talking about the census. I'm talking about actual projections.
In general,
Yeah.
we have grown by 900 people in the last 10 years. So anything else that we have by neighborhood is 10 years old.
Right.
So,
do we have anything forward looking? Like have we
Jack,
projections?
Yes, we do have enrollment projections, which were provided to us by the state. They are being updated this fall because those were done in 2013, and they have been. Which will be a really interesting thing to see, and you'll get that information. They've been spot on in terms of the numbers on the school side. That is what they projected today is what the numbers are today. So they're actually a little bit lower, but I call it spot on. And so these people, we're getting new projections because they only do a 10-year projection. They can only go up to 10 years. And so we're getting a new set because that was from 2013. They're only good till 2023. We will get new enrollment projections.
Okay, interesting. Will we, I mean, outside of the school, but will we also look at like the number of senior citizens that will be in the area, all that kind of stuff? I don't
know. That's something, Joyce, I'd have to ask you on. I don't know if there's
that's kind of more what I'm asking for. Yeah. Okay. No, just something to think about.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So we are at the end of our meeting time here. I really appreciate everybody's input and sharing and discussion. We got a lot of really great input that we'll start, reviewing and working with here. Brian's been capturing the chat. If there are other questions in there, we'll try to get back to you with a follow-up. I know that the mayor sent out the invite and some initial, invitations to y'all joining this group. Going forward, the invites are probably in correspondence to come from me or Brian, maybe sometimes Tamika, but the three of us are going to be communicating with you. And if you need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out. We will, as soon as we can, get some, get that future meeting on the 22nd, hold the time and the date, and we'll get some information to you about the format as soon as we can. Any last questions before we close? Mayor, you want to say anything, or Amy or Dr. Glasner?
Just to say thank you. I thought it was a great discussion. I know we've struggled just very briefly about live versus Zoom, but personally, I thought it worked really well tonight, and I really appreciate the input. Great ideas, great thoughts. So again, thank you and hats off, and we really appreciate your efforts. So thank you.
I would just add, after hearing everyone's ideas and input, my word is excited.
Thanks, Amy.
I'll echo what the mayor and Amy said. Great to be here, and thank you very much for your ideas and your input. I'm really looking forward to the conversations that lie ahead.
Oh, great. One last thing I forgot to say. We are going to put together a visual roster for you all, considering we don't know exactly when we're going to be able to be all together. We thought that'd be helpful. I'll send out a follow-up email, but we will be asking for a headshot and a little bio if you'd like to participate in that. We've got some of your information, from the information you filled out, like your occupation, where you work and things, if you work. So we'll put that together and get that out to you as soon as possible so that you can start to get to know each other. We know it's harder when we're on the Zoom to kind of, again, get to know each other a little bit, but we appreciate your time tonight, and we will be in touch.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Be safe.